We're gonna give you all of the keys behind strength training for women's wrestling, and we're gonna start right now. So there's two aspects here. If we're looking at the best women's wrestlers, especially of all time, Kaori Icho, Tamara Mensah-Stock, Helen Maroulis, then we're looking at the Kawhi sisters. Absolute animals, and they all have a large amount of explosiveness. Of course they have phenomenal technique, but when we're talking about strength training, we're not talking about technique on the mat. That's what the wrestling coaches have to be doing. We're looking at endurance. We're looking at them having a large amount of absolute strength. And then we're looking at how do they execute blast impulse, and then how do they have that sustained endurance so that they can hit those crazy scrambles, so that they can hit those really explosive positions and then get out of them as phenomenally as possible. And we've got to remember, women's wrestling is one of the fastest growing sports in the world. So if we can provide really, really good resistance-based training, performance-based training, that's gonna help advance this sport even faster. So we're gonna go through some of those key aspects and how you guys can apply that to your training today. So before we get into the actual performance aspects, let's look at the differences between women and men. Okay, and first of all, women aren't as dumb as men. Women are much better at taking advice. They're much better at executing what you're telling them to do. Also, women do have to balance the fact that they menstruate. Men don't menstruate, and women aren't just little men running around. Male coaches have to recognize that there is some differences when we're training women. Now, birth control pills do not inhibit strength gains. IUDs can potentially, and these are forms of female contraceptives, IUDs can inhibit sleep potentially. So we have to be aware of that. We have to bring these things up so that we can understand what level we're talking about. If we've got someone who's trying to win the Olympics, these are discussions that have to be had. Now, when we're looking at it from a physiological perspective, women, as they add more muscle mass, will see a massive improvement in their overall power output. And I'm actually thinking about Tamara Mensah-Stock. She's way more hypertrophic and is an absolute animal. Okay, she's got a ton of power, ton of force, ton of speed. Also, when we're looking at women, women tend to have a higher degree of endurance. They can handle more work than men do. They don't have as many fast twitch muscle fibers, generally speaking. So that's another aspect. It's a little bit easier for them to improve their endurance-based conditioning. And then finally, I think it is important to look at where is their body fat at, and then where are they at in regards to these specific weight classes. And I think we should be doing this with men as well. I will say that the women's weight classes aren't as welcoming. I think that there's some issues at the top level as far as when women start to get a little bit bigger. I think they could have a little bit heavier weight classes, but as the sport grows, I think that's something that we're gonna start to see. So now we're gonna get into some of those training aspects that you can apply so you can become freaks on the mat. Okay, so if we're looking at setting up a weight training program for women's wrestling, if we're looking at 4 days a week for about 40 to 45 minutes, the first thing that I like to do, and I'm gonna show you inside of Peak Strength here, is I'm gonna use something like a no-feet power snatch. So we can use this almost as a warm-up. We can sit there and say, all right, let's get 5 doubles done, 6 doubles done, and let's have about 45 to 60 seconds rest and try to be as explosive as possible. Let's stay connected to the ground. Learn how to extend those hips rapidly, finish aggressively overhead. Now, when we're doing something like a no-feet power snatch, we're in a more stable position overhead. This transfers really well when we're going in for collar ties. Oftentimes, or even if we're shooting, we're in an overhead position. If we don't have that shoulder stability at high speeds, which is what power snatch is gonna provide, along with that rapid hip extension, if we don't have that, we're not gonna be as powerful on the mat. And then another big factor, one of my favorite things here would be a front squat. Okay, so inside Peak Strength, and this is inside of our wrestling program. So if you download Peak Strength and you go in, you click that you want to be a wrestler, we can use something like front squats. And if we get women doing pause front squats, or doing unbroken front squats, or even front squats on command, this is a really, really great leg exercise that's going to transfer phenomenally over onto the mat. So we've got to look at what exercises can we use that will lead to that greater mat strength. And if we look at the fact that we need sustained endurance, okay, so scrambling for 20 to 30 seconds and we can recover. We need that blast impulse, being able to be as explosive as possible. That's what those power snatches are gonna cover. But also those pause front squats or unbroken front squats or just normal front squats, that's gonna help improve our absolute strength and our sustained endurance. I would recommend doing them for like 5 triples, 5 sets of 4, and build up that strength over time. Okay, so the next 2 movements, this would be on an upper body power day. So this is something, again, you're gonna see this inside Peak Strength, but we wanna use our garage grips here to improve our grip strength. Now, we can put this on dumbbells here, right? We try to improve that grip strength, and then we can get here and do dumbbell inclines, okay? So we can go, let's say, 5 to 7 reps, nice and aggressive, and we have that open palm, okay? One of the big factors with the open palm that we're using from the garage grips is that now we can have better wrist control, or even when we're pummeling, we're applying force with that open palm. I wanna do 5 sets of 5 to 7, but I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna rest for about 30 to 45 seconds, and I'm gonna show you the next exercise. So one big movement that I think women need to master all of the time and get to the point of doing like 10 to 15 dead hang of these. That's dead hang pull-ups. So we can do the presses, then we can come over on the pull-up bar, and we rest about 30 to 45 seconds. We're here, boom, up, pause, 1, 2, up, boom, 1, 2, up, boom, 1, 2, up, boom. That's gonna help strengthen the lats, and that's gonna help with the knee pick. That's gonna help be heavy on the head. A lot of pulling, a lot of pressing here. That's gonna be pummeling. And then over time, on this upper body day, ideally we get so strong that we start to build into rope climbs, okay? So those are 3 great upper body exercises that you can use to improve that strength training for women's wrestling. Now that third day, we're gonna focus on athlete day. So if we're inside of our at peak strength, we're gonna start off by doing some PVC pipe walks. So we wanna focus on the stability. We wanna focus on co-contractions around our knee joint and around our hip joint. That's gonna help us be more stable. Then we wanna focus after we go through those PVC pipe walks. The next thing that we're gonna do, and you can even see here, skips for distance. So we're gonna get skips for distance. That's gonna help us be as explosive and as twitchy as possible. Think about some of the best Japanese women's wrestlers. They are so technically sound. And when they're hitting those positions, it's like lightning, right? You can barely even see Icho actually moving in for a takedown. And that's what training athlete day will help with. It's not gonna help with the technical aspect. You've gotta master that inside the wrestling room. But we can help you become more fast twitch, or at least recruit at higher speeds by doing those skips for distance. We'd also use an exercise like a side Gwiz jump. Okay, so we're getting into side Gwiz jumps. We trained Nick Gwiazdowski to win 2 world bronze medals, and we use this exercise, the Gwiz jump, to help him learn how to change his level and be explosive from a deeper position. So side Gwiz jumps, single leg Gwiz jumps, and then leading into some type of stair jumps. Those are fantastic exercises that you can use on your athlete day. That's gonna be day 3 of that strength training program for women's wrestling. And then finally, we're gonna finish off with impulse day, okay? So impulse day is moving weight as fast as possible. We wanna have that trunk control. That dynamic trunk control is where all the force can be based upon when we're applying that crazy grip, when we're applying that crazy lat strength. So if we look at impulse day, let's say we start with like a power clean, a hang power clean. Then we get into some single leg squats with dips. We can work through those 3 specific exercises and really build a lot of explosive power, a lot of unilateral strength. Unilateral strength is gonna transfer really well over to the mat. And then finally, even on impulse day, I'd recommend using something like this, okay? So we're here and we wanna be as explosive as possible with our grip. So there's some examples of grip training would be like farmer's walk, or forearm rollers. And those are fantastic movements, but we wanna think about being as explosive as possible. And that's where plate flips come into play, is that we need to be attacking that plate as rapidly as we can. Impulse is about how much force can you apply in a specific period of time. When we're on the mat, we have a minimal amount of time to hit positions. So we have to be explosive, we have to be strong, and we have to have all this endurance. And that's exactly what we provide for you guys inside of our app, Peak Strength, where you can download that wrestling program. It'll lay out a program specific to wrestling, and you can establish your peak date to help you conquer all those opponents. Head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, or the Apple iOS Store, because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.